So I was rummaging through old CBJ files, and I came across a letter written to the community almost 60 years ago by Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory. He was responding to an article from Look magazine, whose cover said, "Vanishing American Jews." And it looked at a variety of factors and it concluded, wow, we are vanishing. Don't know if we're gonna make it. And Rabbi Teitelbaum penned a letter to the community. And he wondered if the conclusion of Look magazine, by the way, Look magazine didn't make it. He wondered if the conclusion was correct, if there were pieces of truth that it lifted up. He reflected that CBJ attendance at Shabbat morning was pitifully small. That last week, there were 12 people in services and 15 guests from the Mormon Church. He lamented parents were not bringing their kids to junior congregation, or if they were dropping them off and leaving. He worried that people weren't here, even for yard sites. In Rabbi Teitelbaum humor, he wondered if we should start a missing persons bureau. He challenged people, come more. These were his words. This is what was powerful. Judaism is a precious privilege and a challenging responsibility. And then he did, as Rabbi Teitelbaum did so beautifully, he invited people to talk. And I read that letter and part of me like, wow, I share some of these fears. I share some of these worries. Bill read my sermon. He said, there was a letter from a couple thousand years ago written to the Jewish community in Alexandria saying, you guys aren't coming and it's not going to be good for us. We are the people of perpetual worry. And at the same time, dear David, here we are. 60 years later, a room full of people, a synagogue that is not just surviving, but thriving, in part due to our ability to adapt, to evolve, and to innovate. Yes, we are thriving. The numbers of this synagogue are actually growing. And yet, Rabbi Teitelbaum's worry is a worry I share in the depths of my heart. And this morning, I want to call on all of us to be part of an ongoing creation of a vibrant, strong, non-fundamentalist, I'll come to that in a moment, Judaism that will sustain, that will thrive, that 60 years later, they will look back and say, look how we've continued to persevere and to be so beautiful and relevant. By the way, let's start here. People come to Beth Jacob and they marvel at the joy, the meaning, the purpose, the connection. Let's build on the foundation. And I want to mention that the reason we're thriving was indeed the foundation that Rabbi Teitelbaum and this community built in subsequent years after that letter. He was an innovator who saw this as a place where community needed to gather. Moved by Mordechai Kaplan and the concept of a community center with many doors of entry, that innovation has allowed us to be in good stead. This synagogue has so many doors to enter. I want you to listen to some of those doors through the voices of our congregants. Where's Sonia Friedman? Are you here, Sonia? No. Sonia gave me permission to share this. Sonia wrote an article for Jewish Women's Archives called "Why Do I Cry at Services?" And actually reading it made me cry. She writes that services for her, she goes to the Power Hour regularly, are a moment to reflect on gratitude, to relish in the happiness of people around her, celebrating life for different reasons. When you celebrate together, when you have gratitude, it brings tears. Brian Greenberg is here Shabbat mornings for Torah study and calls it the highlight of his week. Part of it is that he gets to argue with me. But another part is how we dig into texts. So many different voices. It is indeed the voice of the past, but all of you bring your voices to those incredible texts, and what emerges is just inspiring. It reminds us how Judaism is a roadmap guiding us as we navigate life, and it's study that gets us there. By the way, so many of you, scores of you, share stories of giving and receiving care. A meal that doesn't just sustain your body, it sustains your soul, a call, a ride. Judaism is a refuge during times of need, and people feel that here. Meaningful Jewish connections are not just about the building. It transcends the walls. And if we're to build a dynamic, thriving Judaism, going beyond the walls is where we need to continue to grow. Be it a trip to Israel, a social justice initiative, outings like a nature walk around Jewish values, Shabbat family meals at different homes, beautiful friendships. It's not the building, it's the people, it's the purpose. It's what you find. Love, connection, relevance, purpose, joy. These are the pieces that will sustain us now and into the future. But again, let's be clear-eyed. Let's be honest. For all that we are thriving, it is real that many are disconnected from their Judaism, including some here right now, and so many who are not here. Boy, I worry about those numbers. That causes me to lose sleep. Connections are fraying, identities lost. I hear from too many, I have a Jewish relative way back, but I don't really know what it means. There's reason to worry. And by the way, it's not just limited to Judaism. American life in general, except for fundamentalism, which I think provides very clear, easy answers in a complex, difficult time. American life in general, what we would call liberal religion, is declining in significant ways. A recent Wall Street Journal survey asked people the question that they had asked about 25 years before. They said, do you feel that religion is important to you? In 1998, 62% of the people said, yes, it's important to me. What do you think the answer was in 2023? 39%. Things have changed a lot here in America, and there are a lot of reasons for that. That's for a lecture and not a sermon. But it has been study after study, and the numbers for all kinds of reasons, because I don't know that everyone who's Jewish calls Judaism a religion per se. It might be a peoplehood, it might be an ethnicity. Do you know what the number of Jews who said that religion was very important to them was? What percent? 31%. And of course, as I mentioned, context matters. There was a recent article in Atlantic, an author named Jack Meador, and he suggests that a contemporary American society isn't set up to promote community-focused life. He argues that it's designed to maximize individual achievement as defined by professional and financial success. He's right. Such a system leaves precious little time or energy for forms of community, like religious community, that don't contribute to our professional life. His conclusion is that workism reigns in America, and that because of it, community in America is a math problem that doesn't add up. You add the wonderful values that so many have of family time, recreation, and you again have that math problem that may not add up. Here's what he writes. Lives are stretched like a rubber band about to snap, and synagogue attendance ends up feeling like an item on a checklist that is too long. And I've heard this from you. Rabbi, I love it when I come, but boy, this weekend I have this obligation. This weekend I really have to work. Next weekend I have family. We're stretched so thin. And somehow Judaism doesn't make the list high enough. Can we move Judaism higher on the list? Part of it is you saying, that's important to me. And therefore, I need to reshuffle my actions and behaviors. Asking people to reshuffle actions and behaviors to move something higher on a list that feels so full is a very hard ask. But it's an ask that I want to make because I believe that we can. That non-Orthodox Judaism, non-fundamentalist religion, has the capacity to thrive when we act in partnership. Why? Because it's so relevant. Judaism gives us the connections that our souls crave. And boy, do we need those connections right now. A place where you feel love. Judaism gives us wisdom, and boy, do we need wisdom as we navigate the complex realities of a world that feels chaotic and overwhelming. Judaism gives us a path towards everyday holiness. That's a language that many of us don't even think about, but it is a way of life that is sustaining, nurturing, and beautiful. Judaism gives us an ability to explore issues of faith, beyond the rejection of, I don't believe in that God, being honest with all of our doubts, with all of our anger, with all of our honesty, and say, is there a spiritual place where I can land amidst a broad spectrum of Jewish beliefs and thoughts? Creating, thriving, and call it liberal Judaism, is within our grasp, and it requires each of us. Where does it start? I'm going to suggest that it starts in a place that might not be intuitive. It starts with listening, hearing your stories of connection and disconnection. Because many of those disconnect stories that are part of your past are stories that keep you from walking into a building. And when your story gets lifted up, when your story matters, then this place, this community, not just the building, becomes home. And then from there, after we've listened and we continue to listen, we create space where your story matters. We pull people in with humility and love to a place where you can experience the richness of Jewish practice that is so alive you want to return or to grow your own personal practice. Judaism can more than compete in a marketplace of spare time. Why? Because it is compelling. And on this sacred day, I ask us collectively to commit to 3 actions that I believe will create a powerful pull or reconnect those who've been disconnected as we together say, it matters to us to create a strong, vibrant, non-fundamentalist American Judaism. Action item number 1, I think will also be counterintuitive, different than other sermons I've given. Action 1, stop judging ourselves and others. Ellen Tamkin just wrote a book called Bad Jews. She talks about how pervasive the sense of bad Jew is, both in terms of how we judge ourselves and how we judge others. And it resonates with so much that I hear. Rabbi, I'm a bad Jew. I rarely come to synagogue, just on the high holidays. And when I come, I really don't like those prayers. Rabbi, I'm a non-observant, non-believer who enjoys all the forbidden foods. I know. I'm a bad Jew. Rabbi, I must confess, I love Christmas music. Does that make me a bad Jew? She shares her own story of marrying someone not Jewish and internalizing negative judgment despite the meaningful life she and her husband create. An interesting part of the book is she traces a history about how we've associated certain politics with Judaism, and you feel pushed out if you think, speak, or act differently. You're a bad Jew. Stop saying that. Stop judging yourself and others. Your Judaism is beautiful. Your Judaism is meaningful. So many of you who may call yourself bad Jews, but are such extraordinarily ethical people in every way, are incredible Jews. Don't let others define Judaism for you. Appreciate it. Even, by the way, if you can't name why it's important. I want to give you the philosophy of Franz Rosenzweig. When they asked him, do you put on tefillin in the morning? He didn't say no. He said, not yet. Not yet leaves the door open to finding meaning and connection while not beating ourselves up for that which we don't do. I'm going to ask you to replace judgment with curiosity, to open your heart to what might be, to explore, to question, and to say not yet and really mean it. Do I do Shabbat? Not yet. But think about how you might and what it might mean. As we move away from judgment, doors open. There are different members of the community that, when we're looking really honestly, have a right to say they have felt marginalized or not seen. Jews of color, LGBTQ+, converts, conservatives and primarily liberal synagogues, liberals who feel that if I say that, I'll be ostracized, interfaith families, people who are neuroatypical, and the list goes on. Everyone on that list and everyone who walks through the door needs to feel they're embraced and welcome. Diversity strengthens us. Let's double down on diversity, inclusion, and welcome, embracing what Zach Bodner in his book, Why Do Jewish, calls radical inclusivity, greeting people with bear hugs, except during COVID times, as they walk through the door. This leads to action item number 2. Reflect upon the meaning and purpose Judaism, Jewish community, and practice can hold in your life. Really. Be creative, be innovative, and pull others in. The job of synagogue is to inspire. I see this every day. By the way, earlier I gave some examples. Let me go a little bit deeper. In a world siloed by politics, by age, by socioeconomics, by race, by nationality, Jewish community creates connections to others with whom we may not otherwise encounter. Let me go back to Sonia's amazing essay, Why She Cries at Services. Sonia had a Lador Vador partner, the Goodmans, who were here today. And listen to what she writes about her connection to them. She writes, my 90-year-old Lador Vador partner has a sense of humor of a 16-year-old. That would be you, Ike Goodman. And a wife who's a beautiful singer with fuchsia lipstick. That would be Jeanette. Sonia writes about tiny children playing with the ends of their parents' talit and how each person brings their own love into the room. This is what we are creating, connections that cross every spectrum of our humanity as connections weave us together. A thriving community results. Where else do you encounter the real issues of life seen through the lens of ethics, history, diverse opinion, and evolving practice? You see it right here. Here's what Sonia writes. I relished the time to find personal meaning in prayers and biblical stories. That's what happens when we engage with our Judaism. And while ritual may lend itself to not yet, to fill in Shabbat Kashrut, the ethical imperatives of our time cry out right now. Rabbi Teitelbaum went to Selma to march with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we walk in his footsteps with our activism helping those in need, with our living our Jewish ethics, responding to injustice and bringing these sacred values into the world. It gives our life purpose in a world that at times can feel so overwhelming. I promise you, if you find your way to Shabbat, your life will change for the better. Greta Gerwig, producer of the Barbie movie, wrote that a piece of her motivation to make the movie was going to Shabbat at her friend's home. She's not Jewish, but this was the friend that you were at every day, and they did Shabbat. And on Shabbat, the father would call all of the children together, Greta included, and would bless them. And she writes that she hopes that when people see the movie, they'll feel blessed like she did those Friday nights. Safe, protected, loved, embraced. If Shabbat is not part of your life, if it's on the maybe, but I don't have time, we're too busy list, consider how it might be. And if it already is, make this the year to invite others to join you. Because I think a key piece of a thriving Jewish future is people feeling a responsibility to share the beauty of Judaism with others. We bless each other as we invite them into Jewish practice. Why does Sonia Friedman cry at services? Because she thinks of all the love that surrounds her. That's what Shabbat brings. As we think about where our not yets become I'll tries, and where right now calls upon us to respond where we might not be acting in ways that our world demands, we find those personal connections that sustain and pass on. We find a Judaism that is reinventing itself, that's innovating, that's growing. And that leads to the third action that I want to call upon us to do, which is aim high. I want us to move away from the standard benchmarks that we've used for decades that I know I have referenced and I heard referenced throughout my childhood: intermarriage rates, synagogue affiliation and attendance rates. I want to talk about community tie rates. I want to talk about the number of high touch connections that have occurred and the number of times where you felt the warmth and the pull of community. I want to talk about personal practices, because when they point to low synagogue affiliation, but I know how many people are engaged in lighting of candles and in Jewish practices, that for me is a far more significant number. And I believe that our job is to help you do those things with love and integrity. As we aim high, let's prioritize high-level, relevant Jewish learning for every age. Services are important, and I love them. Learning is that which will utterly change your soul. Professor Finkelstein of the seminary says, when I pray, I talk to God. That's hard for some of us, but when I study, God talks to me. Let's continue to say high level, relevant, compelling Jewish learning needs to be the benchmark that we strive to for every person, for our children. By the way, our children have wonderful educational experiences, preschool and religious school. But we can continue to say, what does it mean to lift the bar? What does it mean to invest in education? Finding teachers is hard. Summer camp is what connected me, youth group, Israel trips, those instill identity. We need to find ways to make that something every single kid here has the opportunity to do. Let's partner with innovative organizations, with other synagogues breaking down ridiculous barriers and walls so that we can be stronger by working together. And here's what's going to be a little different about right now. This is all around each of you as individuals. If you can't make the time when the class is offered, let's talk and we'll put together a way for you to study as an individual. It's about you. If Judaism is to thrive into the next century, it needs to be a grassroots effort. It's all of you sitting here as you embrace the message of committing to meaningful Jewish choices. Ripples cascade into waves. And my deeper ask today is to invite others who may not be here, who may be so disconnected that they don't even know what might be, to share Jewish life with you. Marcia shared how she invited a bunch of people over for Rosh Hashanah. And suddenly people who had not celebrated this for years felt a spark. They felt something beautiful. When you invite and when you share, it touches and it impacts in ways you have no idea of. There's another family here who've said, Rabbi, if there are young families who need a place for Shabbat, we'll have wonderful, wonderful Shabbat dinners. Yay! I need 20 more of you to say, who needs a place for Shabbat? Who needs a place for family? Who needs a place? I mean, it's your initiative that's going to allow a more liberal, open, progressive Judaism to thrive. Franz Rosenzweig's story of not yet actually has an interesting beginning. It began with him ready to leave Judaism. That's a whole nother interesting story in terms of that time in history. So many young liberal Jews were converting to Christianity. But for reasons unclear, he went to one last Kol Nidre service in a small Orthodox shul, and something touched him. We don't know what it was. He never wrote about it. He came back to his Judaism. He learned. He strove to bring new things into his life. He taught us all not yet. He ended up writing books, teaching, and creating institutions that continue to inspire. When we ignite a spark, fire grows. I want you to feel the warmth of that fire, the warmth of all that exists here, the warmth of the meaning that you find, and join together with us in creating a bright future, for we are the fire. Gemar Chatima Tova.